What you are about to hear is the story of a forbidden love between a plantation owner's daughter and a field worker, set in the rigid South of the 1850s, where their love faces impossible odds. The sprawling southern plantation stretched for miles, its white, pillared mansion standing tall amidst fields of cotton, lush magnolia trees, and a shimmering pond tucked away at the edge of their estate. The year was 1853, and the world inside these plantation grounds was ruled by strict social hierarchies and unforgiving expectations. At the heart of it all was Eleanor Whitmore, the beautiful daughter of the plantation's wealthy owner. She was expected to carry herself with grace, to obey her family's wishes, and to marry into a powerful family, securing her future and that of the estate. But Eleanor's heart was restless, her soul yearning for something beyond the gilded cage she lived in. Isaiah, a man who worked the fields, had caught Eleanor's eye months ago. He was strong and quiet, with dark eyes that held the weight of the world in them. He moved through the plantation with purpose, his hands rough from labor, his skin kissed by the sun. Though their worlds were separated by an unbridgeable divide, there was something about Isaiah that drew Eleanor in. She had watched him from a distance, hidden behind the curtains of her bedroom window, feeling a strange pull toward him that she couldn't explain, yet couldn't resist. One hot summer afternoon, as Eleanor wandered down to the pond to escape the suffocating heat and her family's constant pressures, she saw him. Isaiah stood at the edge of the water, his shirt clinging to his skin as he dipped his hands into the cool pond, washing away the day's dirt. He hadn't noticed her yet, but when he did, their eyes locked and the world seemed to stand still. In that moment, everything changed. Eleanor felt her heart race, her breath quickening as she approached him. "I didn't mean to disturb you," she said softly, her voice trembling. She shouldn't be here. She shouldn't be speaking to him. But something about the way Isaiah looked at her, gentle yet intense, made her feel alive in a way she had never felt before. "You're not disturbing me," Isaiah replied, his voice deep and steady, though he too felt the tension in the air. He had noticed Eleanor long before she had noticed him. She was different from the others, curious, with a fire in her eyes that betrayed the life she was expected to lead. From that day on, they began meeting by the pond in secret, stolen moments where the world around them melted away. They talked of dreams, of lives they might have lived had they been born into different circumstances. Their connection was undeniable, and as the days passed, their conversations grew deeper, more intimate, until words were no longer enough to express what they felt. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the pond, Isaiah reached for her hand, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through her. "Eleanor," he whispered, his voice full of emotion, "this isn't just a passing thing. I've tried to stay away, but I can't." Eleanor's heart raced as she stepped closer to him, their faces inches apart. "I can't either," she breathed, her voice trembling. "But if anyone finds out..." She didn't need to finish her sentence. They both knew the consequences of their love. It was forbidden, dangerous. A love like theirs could destroy them both. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Their lips met in a kiss that was filled with all the passion and fear they had been holding back. It was the beginning of a love that defied everything they knew. Days turned into weeks, and Eleanor and Isaiah continued their secret meetings by the pond, hidden from the prying eyes of the Whitmore household and the watchful gaze of society. Their love, once quiet and tentative, now burned brightly, consuming every thought, every breath. They were careful, slipping away under the cover of night or in the rare moments when no one was looking, but the danger of being discovered always hung over them like a dark cloud. Eleanor felt as though she were living two lives. By day, she was the dutiful daughter, poised and graceful, attending lavish dinners with her family and being courted by Nathaniel Stoddard, a wealthy suitor her father had all but arranged for her to marry. Nathaniel was everything her family wanted for her: charming, rich, and powerful. But to Eleanor, he was cold, controlling, and suffocating. He spoke of their future as though it were already decided, never asking what she wanted, never noticing the tension in her voice when she spoke to him. At night, however, she was free to be with Isaiah, free to love without restraint. They would meet by the pond, the moonlight casting soft shadows on their faces as they held each other close, whispering dreams of a life far away from the plantation, a life where their love wasn't a secret, where the world didn't judge them for who they were or what they wanted. But the more they stole away together, the more Eleanor felt the pressure building around her. Nathaniel's advances grew more insistent, and her father's expectations weighed heavily on her shoulders. The Whitmore family was respected, their fortune and reputation tied to the plantation, and Eleanor was seen as a key part of preserving that legacy. Her father made it clear that marrying Nathaniel would secure their future, binding two powerful families together. One evening, after a particularly suffocating dinner where Nathaniel had all but claimed her hand in marriage, Eleanor fled to the pond, her heart pounding in her chest. Isaiah was waiting for her, as he always was, but tonight was different. She could feel the storm inside her brewing, ready to break free. "I can't do this anymore," Eleanor said, her voice trembling as she paced along the edge of the pond. "Nathaniel, he's pushing for the marriage, and my father expects me to say yes." Isaiah's heart sank, though he had known this moment would come. He had tried not to think about it, tried to push away the reality of their situation, but he knew that they couldn't continue like this forever. "What do you want, Eleanor?" he asked quietly, stepping toward her. "Because if you want me, we'll find a way. We'll leave. We'll start over somewhere far from here." Eleanor stopped, turning to face him, tears welling in her eyes. "I want you, Isaiah," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I've never wanted anything more. But if we leave, if we're caught..." She couldn't finish the thought. The consequences of running away together were too terrifying to fully grasp. Isaiah took her hands in his touch grounding her in the moment. "We won't be caught," he said firmly, though the fear lingered in his eyes. "I'll protect you, Eleanor. We can't stay here, pretending like this can go on forever. It's tearing you apart." He was right. The weight of the lie they were living was becoming unbearable. Every time Nathaniel touched her arm, every time her father spoke of their future, it felt like a dagger to her heart. She couldn't go on like this, not without losing herself completely. "We'll leave," she whispered, her voice trembling but filled with resolve. "We'll leave before the engagement is announced. No one will know until it's too late." Isaiah pulled her into his arms, his heart pounding with both fear and hope. "I'll make the plans," he said softly, pressing his forehead to hers. "We'll be gone before anyone can stop us." But even as they embraced, the world around them continued to conspire. The Whitmore household was full of servants, and secrets were hard to keep when eyes and ears were everywhere. Lydia, a house servant who had grown suspicious of Eleanor's late night disappearances, had been watching from the shadows, her loyalty to the Whitmore family driving her to uncover what Eleanor had been hiding. That night, as Eleanor and Isaiah planned their escape, Lydia slipped into the shadows, making her way to the main house. Her heart pounded with the weight of the secret she carried, but her duty to the family pushed her forward. She knocked on the door of Mr. Whitmore's study, her hands trembling as she prepared to tell him everything. The next morning, Eleanor awoke with a sense of hope, believing that in a few days she would be free from the life that had trapped her for so long. But as she descended the grand staircase of the plantation house, she saw her father waiting for her in the parlor, his expression cold and unreadable. "Eleanor," he said, his voice tight. "We need to talk." Eleanor's heart stopped as her father's voice echoed in the grand parlor. The heavy curtains blocked out the sun, leaving the room in a dim, suffocating light. She stood frozen on the stairs, her mind racing. Mr. Whitmore, her father, was rarely in such a serious mood unless something terrible had happened. Eleanor took a deep breath and forced herself to descend the remaining stairs. As she approached, her father's piercing gaze never left her. Sitting beside him, looking equally stern, was Nathaniel Stoddard, the man she was expected to marry. His presence immediately filled Eleanor with dread. "Father, what's going on?" she asked, her voice unsteady as she tried to remain composed. Her father gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit down, Eleanor. We need to discuss the disgrace you've brought upon this family." Her heart sank. Somehow, he knew. She sat her down, her hands trembling in her lap as Mr. Whitmore continued, his voice filled with a cold fury. "I've heard rumors that you've been meeting in secret with one of the workers. A man who is beneath you in every possible way." Eleanor's throat tightened, and her mind raced to find a way out, to deny it, but she knew it was useless. Someone had seen them, someone had spoken. She could feel Nathaniel's eyes burning into her, his expression filled with disgust. "I don't know what you've been thinking," her father spat, "but this ends now. You will marry Nathaniel, as planned, and any thoughts of running off with that man will be put to rest. If you refuse, you will ruin this family, and I will not hesitate to send him away." Tears filled Eleanor's eyes. The walls were closing in around her, and the life she had dreamed of with Isaiah seemed to slip further and further away. "Father, please," she began, but her voice broke. "I'm not asking, Eleanor. I'm telling you, Mr. Whitmore said, his voice like steel. "You will end this, or I will have him taken away, sold to another plantation far from here, where you will never see him again." The words hit her like a blow to the chest. If she refused to comply, Isaiah would be taken from her forever. The mere thought of losing him like that without a word, without a chance to say goodbye, was unbearable. She felt trapped, suffocated by the weight of her father's expectations, by the cold, calculating gaze of Nathaniel, who clearly saw her as nothing more than a prize to be won. Despair washed over her as she realized there was no way out. The escape she and Isaiah had so carefully planned had been ripped from her hands before they even had a chance to try. "I'll do it," Eleanor whispered, her voice shaking. "I'll end it." Her father leaned back in his chair, satisfied. Nathaniel's lips curled into a smug smile, but Eleanor couldn't bear to look at him. Her mind was already racing with thoughts of how to break the news to Isaiah, how to tell him that their dream of freedom was over. Later that night, as the sun set over the plantation, Eleanor made her way to the pond one last time. The sky was tinged with hues of pink and orange, the air warm and heavy with the scent of magnolia blossoms. Isaiah was waiting for her, his face lighting up as he saw her approach. But the moment he saw the expression on her face, his smile faded. "Eleanor, what is it?" he asked, stepping toward her, his hands reaching for hers. Tears streamed down her face as she looked up at him, her heart breaking. "They know, Isaiah. My father, he knows about us. He's given me an ultimatum. If I don't marry Nathaniel, he'll have you taken away. Sold. Isaiah's face darkened, the weight of her words sinking in. No, he whispered, his voice filled with disbelief. We can still leave, Eleanor. We can go tonight right now. We don't have to stay here. Eleanor shook her head, her tears falling freely now. It's too late. They're watching us. I don't know how, but they know everything. If we try to leave, they'll find us. And I can't let them take you away, Isaiah. I can't. Isaiah's hands trembled as he cupped her face, his eyes filled with desperation. We can find a way, he pleaded. We have to. But deep down, they both knew the truth. There was no escape. The world they lived in was too cruel, too rigid to allow a love like theirs to flourish. Their only options were to submit to the roles society had carved out for them, or to be torn apart. I love you, Eleanor whispered, her voice breaking as she leaned into him, their foreheads touching. I love you more than anything. But I can't let you be destroyed because of me. Isaiah's heart ached as he held her, his mind racing with all the what-ifs, all the ways things could have been different. But as the darkness fell around them, the reality of their situation settled over him like a heavy weight. There was no way out. The dream they had shared, the dream of freedom, of love without fear, was gone. I love you too, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I'll always love you, Eleanor. They stood there, holding each other in the stillness of the night, their hearts breaking as they said their final goodbye. The world around them had conspired to keep them apart, and in the end, the love they had fought so hard to protect would be lost to the harsh realities of their world. The next morning, Eleanor donned the dress her father had chosen for her engagement announcement, her heart hollow as she went through the motions of a life that no longer felt like her own. And somewhere far away, Isaiah worked the fields, his heart heavy with the weight of a love that had been torn from him. Their story, passionate, desperate, and tragic, would remain a secret, buried deep within their hearts, never to be spoken of again.